Welcome to Star Wars Newsnet Live. I am your host, Paul Herman, and today, oh boy, we're talking about something I probably don't really want to talk much about, but you know what? It's not all about me, unfortunately. But you know what? I'm going to be fair. I'll be as fair as I can, but either way, thank you so much for joining us, everybody. Again, I'm your host, Paul Herman. We've got Tyler, the kid himself. He's back. The Wonder Kid.
Thank the Force, Paul, that you are not, it's not all about you, and you are not in charge of every single decision that we need to make. Otherwise, we wouldn't be able to have the glorious discourse that is about to take place in just a few moments.
Yeah. I'm gonna listen. I'll get to that. I'll get to that in a second. But before I do, Miguel, I finally have met you. We've talked many a times on our Discord chat. It's nice to finally meet you. And I've seen you on videos as well, so but it's good to finally meet you, sir.
Yeah, likewise. Yeah.
Excellent. And I appreciate you staying up late for us. And so anyway, so yeah, last week you guys talked about the Force Awakens. We're kind of going through the sequel trilogy kind of retroactively a little bit for everything here, which I think is exciting because even though we're going to talk about this movie, which is not my favorite of the films or of the Star Wars anything, we'll just say, I do like the sequel trilogy more than probably most people, I'd say, who are the haters, you could say. And we'll get into the specifics of the strengths and weaknesses for me in this movie. I do think there are strengths, but anyway, yes. So, but as you can see, I do love the sequel trilogy. I love this movie to death. I know. And listen, let me make this very clear. Even though I may not love this movie, I understand that other people love it, The Last Jedi, to death, and that's great. I'm glad people can, connect to an art of some kind. And
Are you sure?
No, I am, because I was going somewhere with this, sir. I was going somewhere with it, I promise. Because I understand if people don't understand my dislike for this movie, because I don't understand people's dislike for this movie completely. So I understand from that perspective. You understand why people dislike this movie? Well, I know you do. That's what I'm saying. But I don't understand the hate it gets. I'll say this. I can understand. That's the thing about, I think, any art and any film. It's one thing to love it despite its flaws, acknowledge the flaws, and I acknowledge the flaws of this. I do have a hard time. It feels like the people who love this movie, not you guys maybe necessarily. I'm not sure if you like this movie or not, or love The Last Jedi or not. But I will say that it feels like online that when people feel that they have to defend this movie because it was such a hard turn of the other side being like, I hate this movie, blah blah blah. It feels like that the people who are I call them the TLJ truthers, that they are like, no, this movie is flawless. There's nothing wrong with this movie. They have to justify every single thing. It's like, you can acknowledge there's some things that aren't necessarily going to work for everyone. And you can acknowledge that. I can acknowledge that for this movie all over the place, but I love it still. I love it, but I can acknowledge the things. We'll get to that movie eventually, and that'll be a fun one, I think. This one's going to be a little bit more of a dreary one, I think, to be quite honest. But that's
for you,
for me. So people who are watching the video, please hit us in the comments and in the live chat. I want you guys and gals, I want you all to please, at a rate out of 10, we're doing this pitchfork style. It could be 0.5, 0.3, 0.2. I don't give a crap. It could be 8.1, 8.2. What is your rating of Last Jedi out of 10? And Tyler, I'll throw it to you because I think this is your idea. You're the genius behind this whole thing. What about this movie, or just general, your first impression leaving it, and how many times did you see it in the theater?
So I saw it in theaters 5 times. I remember going and seeing it 5 times. The first time I saw it, I was in college, and I did not love it the first time I saw it. I liked it. I loved it. Later, I learned to love it, and I would rate it now a 9 out of 10. But here, the reason why is because the first time I saw it, I went in with certain expectations, and this movie for me kind of changed the way that I thought about just cinema and movies in general, and learning how to appreciate what was in front of me instead of trying to force what I felt like was the story that I felt like needed to happen. It also made me think about, well, what is it about Star Wars that I love? Is it this stuff, or is it more of this? And we'll get into that as we go on. And the more I sat with the film and really thought about what it was trying to say and what happened, the more I really just kind of fell in love with it. And it's the Star Wars movie for me where I enjoy it more each time I watch it. Like every time I watch it, I fall more in love with this movie. And that's not the same for all of the others. Some of them I loved the first time. And as I've gone on, it's been a little bit, lower each time. So 9 out of 10 for me. It's my second favorite film in the entire saga.
Miguel.
Okay. You saw it 5 times. I saw it 4 times in theaters. I saw it twice on opening weekend, which was pre-planned. Like the second time was booked in advance. It was done regardless of whether I liked the movie or not, and I absolutely loved it from the first time. It was a transcendent experience for me. It was
wow,
absolutely a wonderful. I wrote actually an article for the site a few months ago for the 5th anniversary, saying it was my favorite theater experience ever, and it still is. Like, wow. It was absolutely amazing that first time. I said 3 more times after that. It's also a 9 for me, 9 out of 10. And I wouldn't say it's my second favorite. I would say my third favorite, after Empire first, and then New Hope, and then Last Jedi. Yeah.
Wow. Well, Tyler, get that list ready to go and organize while I go here. So I'm gonna say out of 10. I should have gave us more thought. It's been a pretty busy day for me. I'm trying because the reason I say is because I want to give it fair, because I'm gonna do my best to give it as much fairness as I can. I'm gonna say probably a 5.5 out of me. 5.5 out of 10. And there's a lot of reasons why I have issues with this movie. A lot of, and we're going to agree to disagree on a lot of things, but we all have our points and our reasons why we like and dislike things. And, I will tell you that I went in this movie, I pretty much knew everything was going to happen. I'm just going to say that. And I still went out of this movie more angry than I ever have in any experience. And you guys don't know me that well. I'm not someone who's going to just, I'm not a complete dramatic person as far as like, I want to hate something and join a cause of like, oh yeah, everyone hates this movie or whatever. I saw it opening night, at midnight, and I left angry, like straight up angry. I was talking to my friend Tim. I had to drive my brother back from like Seattle. For people who live in Washington, I drove back from Seattle to pretty much Arlington. If you know that, then that's like an hour drive. After like 2 a.m. in the morning, whatever. And I was so angry. I just called my friend Tim, the Saga Continues podcast, and I just like vented for like an hour on the way back because I knew he was up. And I was going crazy. I had so many issues with it. And I proceeded, Miguel. I saw it that weekend 3 times. I went back. I saw this movie more than all you guys did in the theater. I saw it 7 times. I saw it so many times. And every time it get a little better. There's things about it I really liked, and there are things about it that I disliked that I absolutely hated and loathed and still do to this day. And I sometimes I'd get over things. Sometimes I wouldn't get over things. And I've seen this movie way more than you probably ever think I ever have, honestly. And there are parts of it that I love legitimately, and there's parts of it that I think are just atrocious. And I'm appalled that they actually allowed this to happen, in my opinion. So I'll just leave it there. There are parts that are great for me. There are parts that I think they're just god awful. But that's just my opinion.
It's funny because you say that, and it seems like you're describing exactly my feelings on Rise of Skywalker.
No, that's fine. That's fine. And that's what I'm saying.
Except for the part about seeing it way more times than you. Like I haven't seen it, Rise of Skywalker, that many times. No.
It's a bummer. It's a great movie.
Life's too short, but
that's
yeah.
You know what? I said the same thing about Last Jedi. That's why I haven't watched it in a long time. So but
I'm just being a bit funny.
I know. Tyler, why don't you give us the list, and we'll kind of start from we'll try to be fair. We'll try to be fair as I can with this movie.
So we did this last week, and just kind of following the similar template as we did last week. We're kind of get into our favorite, was there a favorite trailer moments just leading up to the movie, just maybe a little teaser or a shot in the trailer that stood out to you? Because I think there were so many for The Force Awakens, just little moments building up to the hype, and then it was a little different for The Last Jedi. We'll get into maybe we talked about how many times we saw it in theater. And so I think with movies, the theater experience is so important, and it can make or break a movie sometimes for people, depending on what's going on. So we had some good talk last week about what was your standout theater experience, or did you even have one? Then we'll get into kind of the story beats that worked for us, didn't work for us. And then I thought that something I really enjoy closing on last time was we just talked about just our favorite shots, or even just brief sequence in the movie, just kind of like a positive, but also just appreciating the visual aspect and the emotional aspect of Star Wars. And a lot of times we tied that in with a lot of the John Williams score that was going on with those moments, because that's such an integral part. So I'll throw it to you guys first. We're talking about trailer moments, and if you need a second to think about that trailer moment, I can lead with mine. But do either of you have like a trailer moment or a teaser that stood out to you leading up to the movie that you just feel like that was my moment?
So I don't have a moment, but I do have maybe a different experience than you guys. So I actually skipped the second trailer. I only watched the teaser.
Man.
I
like your style.
Really, really how do I say it? Like very afraid of seeing anything new from the movie after the summer. Like once the actual promotion kicked in. Like I knew, of Porks, and I knew of a couple things, but I didn't know anything that happened in the final trailer, which was quite an experience. And I actually have memories of running out of the theater when I was watching, I don't know, what was it, Blade Runner 2049, and they were playing the Last Jedi trailer, and I ran out of the theater just so I didn't watch it and stuff like that. And I think that absolutely enhanced my experience.
Mm-hmm. That's interesting. I did that for The Rise of Skywalker. I watched the teaser trailer that they released pretty much during the Star Wars celebration stuff. Yeah. And then I didn't really watch anything like after that. I caught like you catch little snippets here and there just being online. Sure. But other than that, it was every time they released a little clip or another teaser, I tried to divert. That's interesting. What about you, Paul?
Well, first of all, I commend both of you guys for doing that, because that's something I've done more recently, and the last couple of years. And I'm pretty much anti-trailer at this point. Like I avoided every trailer for pretty much Ahsoka, besides like I think the first one that came out, the first little teaser. Pretty much I was done. And instead of like watching it more than one time, I'd watch it one time and then try to forget about it. And it's so far, it's done me really well so far for just any movie experience, would be Marvel, Star Wars, or whatever. And I just prefer it. So I commend you back in the day, Miguel, for like doing that for Last Jedi, because that's when trailers were at its height in general, with like the TFA, trailers and the Last Jedi. It's like Star Wars is really driving. I feel like the trailers are really up since Marvel and Star Wars have really been an important thing for moviegoers, but I feel like now it's starting to diminish a little bit slowly. But you're on the money on that. Trailer moment. I was there for the celebration trailer, the first one, and I think I don't know. I think I'm not trying to be mean here. The trailers were always kind of lackluster. It felt like to me, because I don't remember them very well. Yeah, for me, like it just kind of like especially the first one. I can't remember the second one at all, to be quite honest. And it felt like the TFA ones always felt really exciting, and the Rise of Skywalker ones always felt really exciting for me. But the TLJ ones always had a kind of this. I felt that was because it was. I thought it was going to depend on the emotional aspect more, and like which it did. I thought, but so I kind of knew that already going into it. But yeah, I wasn't as excited or remembering the moments as much. Besides maybe Luke saying it's time for the Jedi to end, which wasn't my favorite part. The thing I remember the most and just being like, "Oof, I don't like this." You know, like and not like because I thought it was gonna be terrible, but I was like, "Man, where's it gonna go from here?" So probably I would say that from the most part. But you know, again, I going back to you know the trailer, I would say this is probably my favorite thing in that era. I think this is I have it hanging up right over there. It's fantastic. I love this this poster to death. It should have been the main poster, in my opinion. But
I agree.
Anyway, yeah. Excellent. We agree on something TLJ, Miguel.
Oh yeah, and by the way, the reveal at Celebration of this poster was beautiful because they highlighted first the Ray part, which is the thumbnail of the video, and they zoomed out and they showed the whole poster, which is I know I just have a really good memory of that reveal at Celebration, which I just watched through YouTube, but it was still amazing.
Oh sure, yeah. I mean, I've watched things, those things on YouTube too, and they're whatever, and they're great. So I totally get it. Tyler, so what's next on the docket we got?
Next on the docket, we have the standout theater moment. Was there something about your cinematic experience? And this is not necessarily a positive thing. This can be a negative thing as well. We talked with like Brian and Jay last week. We talked about how some people had. I think Brian had something happen like in his theater experience. He was like, it was all right, but it wasn't great. He actually enjoyed like the second time he went maybe a little bit more. So I think that's interesting. So do you guys have a standout like theater experience from your, first viewing, second viewing that, that stays with you? Paul, what about you?
Yeah, I'm going to go with, I think the best time I've ever seen The Last Jedi, and I'm not trying to be funny here, is probably when the second time I saw it, because I was so angry and wanted to be wrong so badly. When I got to the second viewing, I watched it by myself, and I was very it was very nice to like kind of sit with everything a little bit more. It was a packed crowd. It wasn't at midnight. It was like, but it was like that. It was like I think it was the next day, like in the afternoon, like later afternoon, like at 4 or 5 o'clock on that Friday, and it was packed. People were excited. They cheered all the normal things you'd think you'd cheer at. It was good. I felt better about it leaving that theater. But I still had my major problems with it, but it felt so much better leaving that viewing than my first one, where I was ready to like literally fight somebody. Which again, I'm not proud of saying that, but that's how I was. It's just the truth. I was so angry with what they did in that movie. I was like, ready to,
let me ask you here. So you watched that midnight, the day it came out, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, which was also my first showing. And then you had tickets for like what, 16 hours later?
Yeah.
And you were like, so let's hate watch this right now.
No. You gotta understand, my friend. Like I love Star Wars. Like I will give Star Wars the benefit of the doubt many a times. And I struggled so much with The Last Jedi. So much. Because I want, the thing is, there's nothing like seeing Star Wars on the big screen, even when it's mediocre or not as good as I want it to be, in my opinion, right? I think it's beautiful. I saw Rise of Skywalker like 8 times in the theater. That to me was one of the most fun Star Wars experiences for me. Like I love watching the movie in the theater. It was so much fun. And I have my reasons, which we'll get to later, in the other episodes. But yeah, it was never about hate watching, because I already bought my tickets too. But I would never want to hate watch something. Like I legitimately wanted to try to absorb the story beats and the decision making and the filmmaking way more every time I had seen it. And like I said, there's parts of it I love. There's parts of it that I love for sure. But it was never about hate watching. Listen, trust me, my life is way too short to hate watch something, unless I'm having fun with something, right? Like for instance, my wife and my friends and we all watched Cats, that movie, that horrible musical. That was a blast to watch, or it was also awful. It was a hate watch, but it was still fun. You know what I mean? So like to me, hate watching without the fun is not, and this would not be it. Like if I was gonna hate watch Star Wars, like something like that, I hated that much, it would be painful because I love Star Wars so much. So just want to put that out there.
Okay.
What about you, Miguel?
Standard theater experience. How about all of it?
Just the whole thing.
Yeah,
That's
no,
awesome.
but like this is so I hear stories from like this every time from the US about the packed theaters roaring and yelling and screaming and stuff. That doesn't happen as often here. So this was the case for Last Jedi for my first viewing, where we had like packed house and the crowd was like really into it, and they were cheering at the big moments and gasping at the shocks of the story and stuff. One of the biggest ones being Snoke's death, which maybe all of you saw coming. I didn't see it coming. I was just shocked. Another one being the Holdo maneuver, which was I think that's pretty universal, right? So I think that's like a reaction we saw everywhere in the world with just a common gasp among the crowd, which was that was really good. And finally, like the big one was the reveal at the end when they showed that Luke was actually always on the island and he was force projecting himself on Crate.
Absolutely.
That was just a football stadium worth of a reveal for my crowd. Yeah.
I have to echo what Miguel said, especially the Snoke one. I didn't see coming at all, and it completely just changed everything for me. I'm watching the movie and I'm trying to focus on what's happening, but my mind's racing. Like, what does this mean? Like, I thought this guy was going to be, the new emperor or whatever, so to speak, and suddenly everything changed for me. I will say,
so did the guy who created him.
I will say I've been fortunate to be alive for 5 saga release films coming out. Attack of the Clones is the first movie I ever remember seeing in theaters. I don't feel like I've had a normal experience leading up to any one of these movies. So leading up to seeing The Last Jedi on opening night, I was in college. I finished my finals for the semester, and I wanted to go drive home to watch my sister play in a basketball tournament. I lived like 10 hours away. So I drive in the middle of the night, straight there. I go watch this basketball tournament all day, still haven't slept, and then drove straight to the theater, which was another hour drive away to have a nice theater experience. Drove an hour away to see it, on the big screen, opening night, and I was exhausted. And I must say that even while exhausted, I probably paid a price for that to some degree in my first experience, but it truly was magnificent. And it was a moment of reflection for me when I think about how I view movies now, because it was not what I expected. And I was okay with it being not what I expected, but it took a minute for me to do that. It looks like we lost Paul, but I'm sure that we'll get him back here in a moment.
The Last Jedi hate consumed him.
It consumed him. He couldn't take it anymore.
No.
That or the beautiful thing about the Force is it works in mysterious ways. It may have just decided to cut off his internet connection before he spews any more of the Last Jedi hate onto the live stream. Well, I mean, we're so glad Paul's back. I mean,
I know exactly. You're back. Someone's got to keep you guys honest.
I thought that
I apologize.
Students...
It was you guys cut out right before I get on there. So what were your the last thing we were talking about?
Well, Tyler was just saying how he hates the movie. He was just describing all the points he doesn't like about it, and you just missed it.
I actually, you missed it. I was a little bit worried. I was thinking that I actually my student that I paid to hack Paul's stream to get him off tonight thought it worked out okay, but actually maybe it is. It looks like he's caught off again. So while we're waiting on Paul to reconnect with us, this can now turn into we can turn it into just a Last Jedi love fest now at this point. So next part, we're going to talk about just the story beats in general that really worked for us, but also maybe some that didn't work for us as much. I have a feeling that we're going to cross-reference a little bit on this list. So Miguel, just I have like 7 things written down for this one, but for you, I want to hear.
Okay,
like,
I'm going on the fly then.
Okay,
I'm
yeah,
just-
I took a. I'll have to be honest. I went ahead and I ended my double date tonight with my girlfriend and some of our friends early, so I could get back in time to jot down a few notes. But go ahead. First thing that comes to mind, like a story beat from The Last Jedi that you were like, yes, really appreciated that, or maybe you didn't as much.
So, So
And
okay,
in the chat, if you have some thoughts to say about this, please just fire away.
Let's see how we can structure this. So I'll start off by saying this. I think everything with Luke, Rey, and Kylo worked bonkers. That was absolutely great for me. Everything else, I can see the issues with. I don't necessarily agree with all of them, but I can see the issues. I can understand why people maybe don't like as much Finn's arc, or the infamous Canto Bites sequences, etc. But everything with Rey, Kylo, and Luke, I do not understand the hate.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's pretty much like a good starting point for Paul to just jump in and rip me apart.
Absolutely. Paul, did you catch that when you got back on in time? Like
I didn't. My internet's been going crazy. Yeah, my internet's going crazy. Sorry, guys. What was the last thing?
Essentially, Miguel he was just saying how he felt that the Rey, Luke, Kylo stuff, awesome. He doesn't understand the hate. And then if we bring it back to the other arcs, Finn, Poe, Holdo stuff, he could see maybe some of the discourse there. And while he doesn't necessarily agree. But now back to Paul. I'm sure you want to eat into this a little bit. I told him I got like 7, 8 things written down for this segment. So I'm ready to rock and roll here.
Okay. So we don't have all night. That's the problem. This is the problem. Like, we have to have a full. This is very much a. We can't have a very deep discussion on these things because it will be here forever. And I think, but I do think they're worth it to talk about on a different episode. Where we can get kind of started here, a little bit. What I'm going to say, as far as where. I'll start with Finn and Rose and all that stuff. I think Rose is not a great character. I liked more the first couple of times I saw her, but as I kept watching her, I was like, I'm not. And honestly, it's not the actress. I think the writing lets her down. I think she doesn't have much to work with, in my opinion. I think Finn 100% goes backwards. Doesn't make any sense to me. There's no progression. Literally no progression. It's just got a retread. And you could totally, John Boyega even says much, I think Poe is really weird in this movie. I'll be honest. I enjoy watching this movie when I skip everything but Rey, Kylo Ren, and Luke. Okay. And I'm being 100% serious when I say that. Like, I went back and I think last time I rewatched it, last couple times I saw Last Jedi, I've skipped everything, the exception of Snoke, Rey, all that stuff. Yeah. Everything else, I'm like, but besides the major beats, like the beginning entry, the beginning's like cool, it's fine. It's a little not repetitious, but it's kind of like, I don't know, whatever. It's not perfect, but I still enjoy it for what it is. But I just think when they go to Canto Bight, I'm like, see you later. I think that's one of the worst designed, I think written, I think executed things in Star Wars ever. It's atrocious to watch. I don't know if anyone's wasted their time in watching the deleted scenes of that. I watched it one time and I was like, that is the longest, like 30 minutes ever. Like, the whole chase sequence was like another additional like 5-8 minutes. It felt like an hour. I'm like, this is awful. So yeah, I skip everything that's not Rey, Kylo Ren, and Luke, basically. And it's a much more enjoyable experience, to be quite honest. Now with Luke, Rey, and Kylo.
Okay. Wait. Let's roll with that. Yeah, because there's a lot of stuff. So let's. Do you wanna take it?
Yeah, I would love to. My opinion on Finn in this movie, I feel as if The Last Jedi is the only movie in the sequel trilogy that gives Finn like a really clear character arc and actually takes him from point A to point B in just a really nuanced, like effective way. He comes back and he's concerned about where Rey is. He has the tracker thing, and yes, he wants to get Rey away, but he's really looking after Finn again, just like in The Force Awakens. He wasn't sacrificing everything for the sake of the resistance. He was sacrificing everything. He felt like he had to save his friend. And at the end of The Last Jedi, after his experience with Rose, he still hasn't quite learned like what it's going to take to fight this war, but it's turned into he is now in this for the long haul. He is now a rebel. He is now part of the resistance. He now wants to he doesn't know how to be a leader necessarily yet. That's something that he's going to learn later. But it kind of takes him from this point of like selfishness and just self-preservation for himself and Rey to I'm going to give my life for this cause. I have to beat these people. They are so bad. And it is Rose that tells him, you know, I didn't say I love the way that they handled it with like, it's not how we're, you know, things that we love and they kiss. I thought that was a little bit just over, like a little bit too.
I think that's the worst part of the movie.
But the messaging behind it, though, still I think rings true, even if it's a little bit too much. Is that Finn still has to learn the right way to fight them, and I think it's, in my opinion, the movie that gives him from point A to point B the best. The other movies, I don't think really advance Finn's character very well.
So, okay, I push back a little bit against that with TFA. So here's what how I see Finn in this whole thing. So I think this is one of the downsides of having Last Jedi come right after Force Awakens, right? So it picks up like what, a day later, a few hours later, whatever.
I think it's like hours, yeah.
Yeah, so I think this is one of the downsides because in The Force Awakens, Finn's arc is going from Stormtrooper, or rather defected Stormtrooper, to basically caring for one person in the galaxy, which is Rey, which is the one person he sees as a legitimate ally, right? So this is like really important, and I think this is where Rian Johnson really understood the assignment, that Finn didn't end up in The Force Awakens as a resistance officer. He was Rey's friend, right? So we have to now take him from Rey's friend to someone in the resistance, and that is the arc of Last Jedi. This is not his arc starts in only looking for Rey and ends with actually sacrificing his life for the resistance. I think that's a clear arc. We can argue about the execution and with Canto Bight and whatever, but I agree with you that it is a clear arc. Maybe not the only clear arc in the trilogy. I think TFA also had a solid plan. We can argue all day that maybe JJ had different plans and maybe he was supposed to be a Jedi and maybe he wanted to make up for that in Rise of Skywalker. Whatever, we can argue all day about that. I think he was like the victim of having Last Jedi come right after, because this is like in the whole, like in the big picture, this is like a really small part of his arc, right? But this was a necessary part. And this wasn't like something you do in half a movie, right? So, or rather half this movie. So I think I can understand the argument, but at the same time, I don't think there's an easy solution out of the problem, right?
Well, I'm going to disagree in a sense to where I think Rey, or excuse me, Rey, I think Rian Johnson didn't have to leave. I think he could have made it extend the time. I don't think you could have easily had Luke and Rey push it out 6 months. I've said that before, that and that's to me, I think part of the issue is that, you know, and you can blame some of that on JJ. I'm not going to say it's all on Rian, but Rian decided to pick up right where it left off, which is unprecedented for Star Wars. You know, but again, like, I mean, I'm not saying like we should have. I'm just saying like I think that's a possibility because the way I see it, because you could easily have built, you know, time between Rey and Luke, and like and they could have just, you could have shown like he hasn't done much, and they built up a relationship over that time frame of 6 months or whatever, of him being like, I'm not going to train you, and she's like, you're going to train me, we got to help, we got to do this, you know, because we all know the First Order's in shambles, so they're picking up the pieces. So it felt like there was this urge that we have to pick up right where TFA left off, which I think was a mistake. That's I've said that from the beginning. I never liked the fact that the crawl is like exists, even though it doesn't really need to exist. It's like it's weird. Again, I think part of that falls on JJ. I think part of it falls on Ryan. But yeah, I don't. Because to me, it's you know, you can have a clear arc. I think she had a clear arc. I just don't think it was very good. And I think Finn's arc wasn't very good, and it's just not executed well. It's there, and I'm not going to argue that. I just thought it was bad. It's just a retread, and I do feel that, you know, he was kind. I mean, to me, I think the biggest problem, one of the biggest problems that, you know, Ryan did, besides the stuff that I have a major issue with, is that he brought the three of them away from each other. And that's the one thing I think was a big mistake, because it's like you have this intergalactic space chase going in one direction, and then let's sneak out of the spaceship. And it's like, well, it's like, I feel like you built up these characters in this movie. They kind of team up at the very end of the TFA, and then we just kind of go, okay, see you later. And then Rey meets.
Well, that's sort of what Empire did.
Yeah, but they actually knew, but they already knew each other. But they already knew each other, though. Like, that's the thing, is like, we haven't built off anything with them as a team until Rise of Skywalker. And that's a mistake, in my opinion.
There is the level, though, when we see, especially with Poe and Finn, like, they met from the very beginning of The Force Awakens. And I think Ryan's saying that, you know, the bond they established in escaping together and then also reuniting with one another later on and seeing that they're alive, like that, even though there's not a lot of time spent with each other, it created like an inseparable bond between the two, like this level of just kind of trust over the joint experience. And so I think that carries over. I also think that even though the amount of time necessarily that Rey and Luke had spent together wasn't as much as we would have liked, Star Wars has shown in the past that just a limited amount of time can leave a tremendous impact. I mean, Luke with Obi-Wan barely spent any time together in A New Hope, but, you know, Obi-Wan was his almost guiding force for 3 movies.
That was what I'm saying is the main characters. They don't spend enough time as a unit together, and that is a problem. And that definitely is all on Rian Johnson, in my opinion. And that's not on JJ. And I think he could have easily have made it come together more as them as a team. And yeah, again, major issue I have with it, but, you know, I just think all the Finn and Poe stuff is really weak in the movie. Okay, the best stuff is definitely is Luke and Rey.
Here's what I push back. So maybe this is like a different approach in general to storytelling, but to me, like, what is the most important thing about a movie? It's the story. Right. So what is the story of The Last Jedi? What do you think is the story?
What I think the story is?
Yep.
Like what the themes
fundamental
are?
message.
Or what,
the fundamental message of
the fundamental message that Ryan's trying to get out is that that, to me, that anyone can be a hero and anyone can, you know, save the galaxy, and all it takes is, you know, the right the right people together and to cherish what you love. Like, to me, like, that's exactly, you know, it doesn't matter where you come from, which, again, those are all valuable themes but I just think that in this context of what they built from the previous films and film before it, it's not a bad thing in Star Wars. It's definitely there, but be the focal point of the main characters, of Rey herself, I think was a mistake.
So to me, the story is very simple. It's 3 words. You build your own destiny. Well, 5 words. You build your own destiny. So this is the theme that applies to every single character arc. Rey doesn't know where she comes from. She actually comes from nowhere. Whatever happens later. In this movie, she comes from nowhere. She has to learn that she has to build her own destiny. The same goes for Kylo. She comes from his grandfather, and he's been told his whole life that by Snoke and by whoever that he's supposed to be this, he's supposed to be that. No. Kill the past, you build your own destiny. This is the whole thing about the movie. The same
Miguel,
applies,
the problem with right. But here's the problem. You contradict that with Luke Skywalker walking in to go kill his own nephew. That's the problem.
No, but that is not the end of the arc. That is the beginning of the arc. The arc tells you what the theme is. The beginning of the arc is you start with a Luke that was wrong, and then he learns from that lesson, and the lesson is the same.
But the problem is, why is Luke, this whole message here, why does he not believe it when it's already in his mind before? Like, he has all this experience, and then all of a sudden he's blinded by his nephew, and he goes in and he's like, he reads his mind and says, oh, this guy's going to kill everyone. It's like, doesn't make any sense. There's no context to it. And that's my biggest problem with this movie.
Actually,
hold on. Well, yeah. I know you disagree with me, but you just talk for a second. Let me talk. The thing is, when you have the guts to do that, right? Not you, but Rian Johnson, when you have the guts to do that, and I understand forge your own destiny, but like, I know Luke's supposed to be the pillar of that, but you sacrificed a character that to me was out of character to do that. And to me, Luke, it totally contradicts, in my opinion, Return of the Jedi. To me, it's like everything that Luke has faced, that you basically, if we had better context, maybe it would be better. And this is the problem. Like, story decisions, whatever. The problem I think I have with the fact that it exists. It's the fact that it exists. The fact that we don't have any context other than just, it's literally under a minute of dialogue of Luke of why he has to basically off his own nephew. And it's such a leap. And I understand, like, people love that decision. They love that people can make mistakes. I don't want to take anything away from that from people. But for me to justify like a character that I've loved since I was like, I can remember I was born. And then all of a sudden, and I see him throw a lightsaber away, that he's like, no, I will not kill my own father because, I know like that's wrong. And then it's literally, I don't see him again until I'm in my late 30s. And then he goes, 20 seconds of dialogue. And that's supposed to justify this really crazy moment. It's like, to me, it's such a leap. And the fact that it got okayed by Kathleen and Rian Johnson thought it was a great idea. It is just baffling to me. It's just people can love it, but to me, it's a giant leap. And the fact that people want to say like, oh, it justify it. It's like, you could justify it, but there's literally no context. There's no context. And if you're going to have that, if that's going to be the basis of your themes, then give me more. Give me 10 minutes of a flashback, for God's sakes. Instead of saving 20 minutes of Canto Bight, give me 10 minutes of a flashback. This whole movie is a whole unconventional Star Wars movie anyway. Just do that. So I just want to shove that back. It gets me riled up. I'm sorry.
And Miguel, if you'll let me kind of chime in just for 1 second,
Please.
Take it away. So you mentioned, I think, the 10 minutes of a flashback, and I think what the dialogue and some of the exposition does is it gives you more than 10 minutes of a flashback on screen. It gives you thousands of years of history of what led to the Jedi's demise that leads to what happened, I think, to Luke. He talks about the hubris and the pride of the Jedi getting in the way and having them make decisions and change fundamentally, and becoming blind to what was there. We saw the Jedi make decisions in the prequels and the stories told there that are fundamentally not necessarily what the Jedi should be doing. Luke then talks about how in his own hubris, he became a legend. And I think just in the few words that he says, he gives us a perfect picture of he allowed what happened before to even happen again within himself. And he talks about how that pride and that hubris, like when you think about like empires or things that have been built up, they're so afraid of losing what they have built up. And Luke shows in that moment, he had this, vision. He had the dark, since the darkness. And he says, he's like, in a moment of pure instinct, he saw that everything that he had built, everything he had sacrificed for was going to be completely destroyed because of this person in front of him. Ignites the lightsaber, yes, but in that moment of pure instinct, it passed like a fleeting shadow, and he was left with shame. And I think the point of the story was, even our greatest hero, who we saw because he had that connection with his father, that same hubris, that same pride, ultimately blinded him for what was ultimately a 1 second mistake that had catastrophic impacts. And I think what Miguel said is like, that's the beginning of the arc, because Luke does end up forging his own destiny again and I looked this up to make sure I was correct, which was, it's like the 2025 mark in the movie. He tells Rey, like, what do you want me to do? Come out and, face the First Order with a laser sword. And then with 2025 left in the movie, he does that very thing and becomes the legend that he has to be. So I think instead of like a long drawn out flashback, instead of a long scene doing that,
we get no progression
by calling on what we already know to have happened before.
We don't know what happened before. We have no context of what happened between him and Kylo. We have no reason to why he goes and visits Kylo basically to confront him in the middle of the night. Like the whole thing existing, it's poorly executed. And I understand it's executed in a way to have the different perspectives. I understand the arc. That's all there. I'm not arguing that point. To me, it never justifies its reason to exist. It never does, except for a couple of things of dialogue, which is just very much, to me, it's a waste. To me, this whole movie is a vacuum storytelling. I've said that from the beginning. And I have no problem. Like I've gone up against, I've had this argument. You have no idea how many people I've had this conversation with. And again, like the arc and everything can begin. I get it. Like I understand all that. Like it's all there. But for me, the execution, like people say, like, people in the chat here think I'm crazy, which is fine. I have no problem with that. With Luke, to me, again, it's all of a perception, right? Like we all interpret art differently. That's what makes art, I think, awesome. It's because we can look at things differently than other people. And to me, it's a right or wrong. It could be objective, subjective, whatever. But to me, my perception of Return of the Jedi is, you have to be, he goes to the dark side because Vader threatens Leia. That's why, right? He loses control. And that's what he takes him over and he almost kills Luke. And then he almost kills Vader, excuse me. And he says, okay, because what does Luke do? He says, I'm not going to fight you anymore. I'm done. And that's what the whole reason why Luke fights is because Vader lures him out. He lures him out through the danger of his own loved ones, right? He literally threatens that. And that's where Luke loses control. And to me, it's like, I understand the human element. I love those ideas. I mean, I look at my favorite character in fictional history is Spider-Man. And what does he do? He basically doesn't stop someone. He's responsible for his uncle's death, basically. And like, there's a huge flaw in that. And I love flawed characters, but to me, it has, in my opinion, you have to justify the reason why Luke's going to confront Kylo Ren and not tell me in a 5-second dialogue. To me, like, why is Luke in this position? Like, to me, it's just never. I don't understand. It's like I have seen Luke. The last time I see him, and say, no, I will not kill my own loved one, and no, I will not. It's like it just baffles me. It baffles me as much as people. I baffle other people that they don't understand the perspective. It's like, I just don't understand. I can make a giant, huge mistake and be like, yeah, I'll never do that again. And then I believe you talk about destiny, make your own destiny. It's like, this is another thing, right? Like Luke loses the Force and he's supposed to be a Jedi master, right? I'm sure he's done all kinds of studying. What does Yoda tell him in Empire Strikes Back? Clouded the future is. So he already knows the Force isn't a reliable narrator, but he's going to read Kylo's mind and be like, Force is right. See, these are the things, these are the inconsistencies that we have. if we had reason, if we were shown a reason why Kylo Ren was not to be trusted. All we have is a simple thing of dialogue of like, oh yeah, I need to justify this. There's danger in his training. To me, that's not enough. And again, because of the way Ryan put a story in there, that's where we're at. And if a couple lines of dialogue justify it for you to justify Luke trying to kill his own nephew, attempted murder, that's fine. That's on you. It's not for me. I need more.
I don't think it's attempted murder, but I'll let Miguel kind of close us out, and we can talk about like Rey and maybe the Kylo dynamic between it as well.
So, I don't know. I just don't see it. Well, my point being, he's human, he's flawed, and he basically he made a snap decision that he instantly regretted, and I think we can all relate to that. Like that happens to me twice a day. That I basically make the same mistake that I, made 2 weeks ago and said I'd never do again. Maybe it's not the same exactly because that was like a life-changing decision for him. I understand but at the same time, it was.
If I put a gun to someone's head in the middle of the night, like that's not a mistake.
Well, it's not.
Or having a gun like this while someone's sleeping and thinking about pulling a trigger, that's not a mistake. That to me, that's a mistake. But that is a big deal. That is preemptive.
When Luke goes to confront Kylo, I don't think he's going into the tent with the intent to kill him. I think that's what's because he's going to confront him because I think he wants to talk.
Sure.
And when he gets there, he feels the darkness that is taken over, and he saw that he would be everything destroyed. And I think just like you mentioned with Leia and Vader, and he reacted when Vader talked about Leia, and he reacted. He probably within, that vision or that whatever, he probably saw the destruction of Leia, of all his wards, all of his pupils. And it was, oh my gosh. And then you're like, what am I doing? Like, and then it's too late.
See, that's a problem though, too. It's like, why have the setting? Why have that at night when he's sleeping? It's like, it's to justify to set up this whole dramatic thing of like, I'm going to have Luke lose control because he's sleeping in the middle of the night. And it's going to give this impression. It's like, the way everything is set up. If you want to have Luke be flawed, do it a different way. Don't
it's
have
set at night because
he wants to set up the fact that he wants to off his nephew while he's sleeping.
Well,
which is literally that's what he wants to do. That's what the whole reason is. Okay, hold on.
To want is to have an intention, to have a premeditated intention. It was not premeditated.
He turned on his lightsaber. That's intent. He turned on his lightsaber. Has that not intention?
Well, the Jedi walk into the Senate chambers with their lightsabers on, but to listen to what's going on in Senate hearings, they're not walking in with the intention of offing off Senator Bail Organa, in the Senate pew next to them.
He goes to confront. Snap decision. I guess to me, snap decision is still intent though. You can't. It's like it's just like it wasn't like he was being attacked.
Reflex. It's a reflex. So he's been trained to act on a big threat from the dark side, and the moment he sees that, he activates the lightsaber. And the moment he then realizes this is his nephew he's talking about, he turns it off.
To me, when you turn on the lightsaber and you're basically like, it's like, again, to me, it's like pointing a gun at someone's head. It's like if you're preemptively thinking about murdering someone, even for a split second, and you actually have the weapon out, that's a big deal. So to me, that, just because, again, going back to what I said before, the Force is an unreliable narrator. Luke knows this. If he knows this, why is he trusting it?
Yeah, but he also knows he's his nephew. But at the moment, he doesn't see that.
But that's the thing, man. If he could see it, it's just like,
if he could see it, he
to me,
wouldn't have ignited the lightsaber.
You're
That's the
right.
point.
And if Ryan Johnson didn't write the story, then we wouldn't be there
he-
either. I mean, like, I just like it's to me, it's all about setting up Ryan Johnson's specific vision of like what I want to do. I want to have him coming in his middle of the night sleeping. And again, it's like to me, it makes no sense. It's out of character. It's out of character. It'd be like all of a sudden Yoda being like, oh man, like I guess the Force isn't an unreliable narrator. Go save your friends, Luke. It's like
I don't think so, because Yoda was introduced to us as like the sage, as the mentor. Like Luke was introduced to us as the wide-eyed young boy, and we never saw him become like the master. And we fast forward 30 years and we don't know what's been going on. And I think Ryan wanted to bring us to a point where we at least just understood why he has secluded himself shamefully, because he was so ashamed of what happened. It's just a 10-second clip in the movie, I don't think. And we talked about it a long time, but I think he just wanted to bring us to the point of like where he's at right now with Rey in this moment of shame, and what she's ultimately going to be able to do to pull him out of it and become who the Luke we are familiar with, and the Luke that we wanted. And I would say that's like the important takeaway, is he ultimately is who we think he is. But instead of we could talk about Luke for another hour, but I
warned you guys. I'm like, guys, this is not. Right. I tried to warn you guys.
But there's a lot of other great like performances and characters in the movie, and I think you cannot talk about The Last Jedi without getting really into the nitty gritty with Rey and Kylo's dynamic and like their intertwining arcs. So I personally absolutely love both of their arcs in this movie. My favorite part about Rey is just the fact that she goes from trying to find her place, and then she looks to Luke as the person who's supposed to come in and save the day. And then she's like, nope, Kylo, Ben is the one who's supposed to come in and save the day. And then, I sent the picture to you, Paul, of when she's lifting the rocks at the end and she realizes, no, I am actually the one that has to come in and save the day. And she's forging her own destiny, as Miguel said in that. I think it's my favorite, one of my favorite arcs and moments in all of Star Wars, when she lifts those rocks to save the Resistance. That gets me every single time. And then on the flip side with Kylo, I did not see him killing Snoke at all. It completely threw me through a loop. I did not know what to expect or what to think after that happened. And for a moment, I'm like, is he about to join up with them? Is he about to start his own thing? And then we see them, go their separate ways, and he's, unable to learn. Everything about their characters are just intertwined in this to become, the dyad that we know they're going to be. And I absolutely love everything to do with these two characters. I think that Adam Driver's performance in this movie is just absolutely sensational. And I would love to hear what you guys think about, these two character arcs. I have some more notes on it, but that was just kind of just a brief, little interlude into some of the important things at play.
Go ahead, Miguel.
I don't really have much to add. I also love this moment. So, okay, let's flip it for a second. So I agree with everything you just said. And I don't really have much to add. I love probably my favorite, one of my favorite moments of the entire movie is the throne room scene with Snoke, and then the fight. I think that's just spectacular. But to be a bit more negative, I'm not sure I ever loved her look here. Like her costume. Like I don't love that it's. I don't dislike it on in a vacuum, but I don't love that it's different from TFA.
I did like how she changed costume a few times in this, and it's not the same look every single time. I guess I don't love the look. I like her TFA, and even her Rise of Skywalker looks more. But I did appreciate that we got to see just some different costume changes, or at least in the movie.
I get that. It's just that being the next day after Force Awakens, it just feels kind of weird that she's now dressed in different I guess she could shower and stuff and change clothes, but it's not like really the Star Wars way, but
She experienced rain for the first time. She went
yeah, I
running
mean
around. So then she's like,
no.
"Oh, I can tie my hair in different ways now."
And speaking of which, I love the talking to each other through the Force. I thought that was.
I do
really
love
cool.
that too. I want it very clear. Like the Rey, besides the no one part, which is not something I've never liked, but I do love their relationship. That I do think that JJ, in my opinion, builds well off of Rise of Skywalker. I think that there's lots of great stuff. The Force Skype, if people call it, I love that stuff.
Yep.
Despite my huge dislike of Luke's character in this movie, I will say that if that was a little bit different, I like all the stuff with Luke, Rey, and Kylo. That's why I can still watch this movie, because I do like everything around it. I do like the relationship. I don't like where Rey ends up in it with the whole like no one angle, which I could go on. I'll save that for Rise of Skywalker. But the thing is, I do like the fact that we have this interconnection between them, because it builds off something that we haven't seen before. So it makes them like have like what's special between them, like, right? Like, I do think there's a great build up there that Ryan does a good job of. I've even praised Ryan Johnson's writing people. And it does feel like a cool like buildup of these two characters, and Luke kind of like being caught in the middle because these are his former students, right? Or his new and his past students. So, but yeah, I'm with you too, Miguel. I've never been a fan of the robe costume. I really liked the shoulder, like the little shoulder thing she had, the shoulder pad. Not even a shoulder pad. It's almost like a shoulder pad / vest. I love that costume she has, so I was bummed out when she dived in the water and got and took, had changed with the robe thing, which was, whatever. But I'm with you on that one. But I like that costume a lot. That was cool.
Okay. Yeah.
It was great. The throne room scene is iconic. Her cave scene, I really love her cave scene.
Yeah.
Just everything that Ryan did with these characters. We'll just stick with these characters. It was just so intentional and pointed. Like when she sees herself like in the cave, it comes at the exact like halfway mark at the movie. Like if you pause it, it's literally the exact halfway point in the movie, telling you like this is like so important right here, because everything after this changes for her forever. And so it was just a lot of fun. Throne room scene, that action sequence, and just the build up to Snoke's death before, it's got to be a top 3-4 sequence in Star Wars for me. Like in all of Star Wars, I don't care, TV, live action, movies, whatever. It hits every time.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah.
So before we,
I love the throne room scene. Sorry.
It's like as we close it out here. Oh, go ahead, Paul.
Yeah, I like the throne room scene too. Even though it gets a lot of like crap now, it feels like, but I do like the throne room scene. It does. It's gotten some hate because of those stunt guys. Because there's some stuff that I think that are like, it's just like, eesh, looking at, again, I'm not trying to be like the guy who's like, yeah, this is bad. Like, I'm not trying to be like that, but there are some things in that when I watch it now, I'm like, yeah, it's not very good, So, but that being said, I still love it. I still think it's good. So
I just love the shock. I just love the shock of 10 minutes ago. You wouldn't even guess these two characters are going to talk to each other, and now they're fighting on the same side. Yeah. And they're not even agreeing on everything, but they're just like, I don't know. I just love the juxtaposition between that scene and like 5 minutes ago when they were just, facing each other with Snoke in the background. I just remember the shock from the theater. Like, what does it mean that these two are fighting together? Like, seriously.
Yeah.
And maybe that just built from there. In my eyes, I don't know.
And we're an hour and 4, so I don't want to go off on too deep of a tirade, but I just have to. This is just really important for me right now. the critics of the throne room scene with the random like weapon disappearance or someone doing something, absolutely that irritates me, I think, more than any other discourse in all of Star Wars, because when people, if we want to just slow and do frame by frame, slow-mo, whatever,
I agree with
things,
this. Yeah.
then sure, we could probably point out any single movie. People do that with every, you could do that with every duel.
The Force kick in Return of the Jedi.
Yeah, like you could do that with everything. Yeah. That's not the way we're supposed to be watching this. And I guess some people are just a lot smarter than I am. And they were able to just, first time watching, just catch every one of those little things in fast motion. I didn't notice those things the first time because I was just completely enveloped in the story and in the sequence itself. And as Miguel said, just the awe of watching these two now, fighting with each other. If we're going to slow everything down frame by frame, that's just not the way that movies are supposed to be watched. That's not the way this was supposed to be enjoyed. And if we're not even going to attempt to do that, like what are we doing here? And that probably for me is just something that I had to just drive home, because that discourse it's the only thing with The Last Jedi that actually still gets under my skin, because I've just accepted the rest of it. Like it's just always going to be this little thing that exists. But that one in particular always gets a little bit of a rise.
And guess what? You don't even know that Rian Johnson didn't notice that. Maybe he knows. Like maybe he knew from the beginning.
They knew. I'm almost positive they did.
The point is that they thought that take was the best, and for whatever reason,
good point. Yeah.
It just works. Like this is the same with continuity errors all the time in movies. Like, do you think you're so smart because you noticed that this object was here in this take and it was over there in the other take? Well, guess what? They chose this take over the other one, or this whatever, because the performances were optimal here. And like there's just so many things that go into making these decisions other than the continuity or making sure weapons don't disappear from one take.
Absolutely.
Well, and this is kind of bring what Miguel's saying up too. I mean, there's a part in the Batman '89 movie where when Jack Nicholson reveals himself for the first time as a Joker. And I've seen that movie a million times. And when I was watching on DVD with the commentary, Tim Burton pointed out a huge error on the Joker. He's got a big purple dot like right here from where like the makeup, like basically like his makeup with something else like caused it to go purple, and no one caught it. And it's the best take out of all of them. He's like,
oh, awesome there. That's all right. We're about to close that anyway. But Miguel, I was curious before we get off, was there a particular just shots, moment with the score, like interluding with the film that just
I'm
really?
I'm just gonna leave it in.
That really stood out to you.
Yeah. So okay, two very good questions. First of all, I think this movie is gorgeous. I think this is, if it doesn't have the best cinematography of the entire franchise, Rise of Skywalker does, but they are one of like the two of them for me are just well above everything else in the franchise in terms of cinematography. Like this movie is absolutely gorgeous to watch. There are shots in this movie that are unforgettable. I'm talking the hold up maneuver to the crate battle. I think those are just amazing. The shot of the throne room scene you were showing earlier is also amazing. Like everything in this movie looks absolutely stunning. In terms of score, actually, I kind of think that this is the worst of the sequels. I listened to, like, maybe it's because TFA had the introduction of the Rey theme that maybe that sticks out, and also the last theme at the end with the Jedi steps. Yes. Maybe those two like really stick out to me, and maybe that's why Force Awakens is more memorable in terms of score for me. And Rise of Skywalker also has like some really beautiful themes, particularly at the end, and also the speeder chase has a really good score as well. I think the only new theme here from John Williams was the one with the Canto Bight chase, which is I think called Fun with Finn and Rose or something like that, which is like kind of this theme of the two characters that works, but it's not really memorable. However, I do love the fact that they brought back the Luke and Leia theme from Return of the Jedi, which plays during their re-encounter, which is amazing. So
absolutely.
Please take it.
Yeah, I would agree. To me, it's the weakest one of the three. And we talked last week about how Rey's theme for me is just one of the best, themes in all of Star Wars. I just absolutely love it. And then Episode 9, towards the end and throughout, just really interweave that with some of the Force theme stuff, in just a pretty amazing way. So this one, there's not really a moment in this one where it's that moment where you remember this with the music. The closest one for me would be in the throne room as the Force theme is building up, and then as Rey reaches out with the Force, and the big note hits as she's grabbing it.
Also a beautiful shot, by the way.
Yeah. And then she turns and faces Kylo, and he ignites his as well. Like that to me is kind of the moment of the movie, music wise and shot wise. They kind of blend in. So like that's probably for me what I would say. But I pretty much agree with everything else that you said. It is a gorgeous movie to watch. It's I get blown away every time I watch it. I'm like, man, just take me back to the theater for the first time. And I hope that future Star Wars films, the ones that we have coming up in the future, can hope to match what this one looks like, just on a day in, day out basis. Before we'll give Paul just one more second, see if he can come back in and help close this out. So any last thoughts that you want to share just on the movie, sequels in general, before we kind of just close out of here?
So the theme of the movie is, as I was saying earlier, you build your own destiny and you are not tied to the past. And that was the message that Ryan also wanted to say about the Star Wars franchise, and that Lucasfilm maybe didn't listen as much. And they said, actually, we're not going to move forward, we're going to move backwards. And we're going to reject everything, and we're going to bring back Obi-Wan for a story that maybe we don't even need. We're going to bring back Luke in Mandalorian because whatever. And I think he was like way far ahead than everyone else doing movies for them. Like this was $200 million indie movie for him. This was not about the spectacle, but about the themes, and also about the spectacle. Like, and it's about the spectacle because he has the budget for it, but story comes first. And I get that he was mostly focused on Rey, Kylo, and Luke because that's the richest part of your story, and maybe he overlooked some of the other characters. We haven't even talked about Poe, which is an arc I kind of liked, but I also get the downside of. But yeah, I mean, that is my whole point with this movie. Like, I think Rian Johnson was like 15 years too early. He was sending the message that nobody wanted to hear, and I don't think that's why the people don't like the movie. I get that there are many different reasons, but I think that's one of the reasons, one of the underlying reasons, if you will, why.
I think that so much of social media and just the hype around trying to predict what's going to happen and creating our own fan theories and people diving into the YouTube rabbit holes has really affected what happened with this movie. And so as one of those people that dove way too deep after Force Awakens, it was like almost like a reset for me, and being able to have that just clean reset and have a movie that kind of delivers a message of, Rey, nobody being someone that could change the galaxy forever. It is, I think, just my favorite just kind of theme and arc in all of Star Wars that really resonates with me, which is why The Rise of Skywalker does anger me a lot sometimes, because they just kind of took that and tossed it away and tried to revert back, like you said, and go backwards. And it the Palpatine stuff, it has its merits, but I just really wish they had continued and been bold and said, we're gonna stick with this. The sequels, I absolutely love them. I hope that they age as well in terms of popularity as the prequels have, because they're so universally.
I think they will.
Love now. I hope they do. I have a feeling that they will as well, and I'm excited for the Rey movie. We're going to talk more about that as it goes on. I hope it gets received well in the future. So we'll be back next week to talk another film. We'll be having Paul on for Rise of Skywalker here in 2 weeks. I think next week we're going to do a deep dive. We're going to take a week off from the films next week. We're going to do a deep dive into some High Republic Phase 3 with the Eye of Darkness just coming out. This month I've read it. Nate just published a review for it on the website on Star Wars Newsnet. So please check that out. And then in 2 weeks, we'll be here to talk everything Rise of Skywalker. Brian will be back. Hopefully by then he's still out sick. Paul, I know, joined just in time to hear the good news about Rise of Skywalker in a couple weeks.
My internet, for whatever reason, on my computer just is awful. And then I get on my phone and I get off my internet. It's crazy. It's been pretty reliable for the most part, but I haven't had a chance to go up and reset it. So I apologize to everyone. I do apologize for my Luke thoughts and views, much to the chagrin of the people in the chat. That's fine. And that's I want to preface it like this, and I apologize for getting too uppity too. I get passionate. It's just something I get really passionate about. My best friend Chris with the Comic Binge. If you guys have ever watched that show, I have literally I've only been mad at him like one time. It was over a Last Jedi argument. I threw comics down at the floor because he echoes everything you guys say, but I'm like no, So you guys can. Remember the chat in the Discord. I told you guys, I'm telling you right now. I've said on the show, this is a big topic for me. I get very heated about this. It's something I just feel very passionate about. So I apologize to Miguel and everyone out there if I offend people. I'm not trying to be offensive. I just get very upset and talk about it. And if you disagree with me, it's fine. And that's the reason why when I first went to the Star Wars Newsnet, I really wanted to bring the aspect of having different opinions and getting passionate about whatever it is, and not feeling like hating the other person, but letting people have their views. And I think that's important, and I made that very clear. Like I may disagree completely with both of you and a lot of people in the show, but I would 1,000% want to respect and honor and when I say respect, I mean like understand that like that's what you guys feel and know like there's validity there. Like I may not feel that same way, but know that validity is there, and like I want to embrace that and respect that and try to see the side of it. And I see those sides, I see those merits. I don't agree with it, but again, I want to embrace and enjoy and try to understand. Like I definitely feel like even through this conversation with you guys, I understand the reasoning a little bit better. Even I don't agree with it, but I understand the reasoning more of Luke going to at night, those things. Every time I have this conversation with my friends, it always gets better as far as me understanding it. I don't agree with it still, but it's not about changing people. It's not about changing people's minds and having the dunk. I want to make that very clear. It's not about dunking on people. I think it's just about understanding and respecting and just, really embracing our viewpoints. And that's the thing about it. I think the problem with the Luke thing, it's either side is very much like, no, you're completely 1,000% wrong, and you're wrong, and you're bad. It's like, no, it's because in the end, it is what it is at this point, right? It exists. And that's the thing about it that I've come to terms with. And I've said before on the show and on this and before on other shows on Saga Continues. Luke, I like Luke, but minus that. Like that's the one thing in this movie that just drives me nuts. And I will always hate it. But I still like Luke. I like the force projection. I like all that stuff. I don't hate it to everyone else, but there's just certain things about it I don't like. But at the end of the day, it is what it is, and it exists, and I have to honor them. And it's it's like you guys have to honor the movie that I love back here, and I guess I love that movie. It exists, and it's not going anywhere anytime soon, and it's just coexist together. And what's agreed is to agree together in love and kindness. So what you guys have both demonstrated to me, I appreciate it. I really want to say thank you to both of you for letting me vent there for a second, because I knew I was like, this is going to come. I'm going to do my best to hold. It's hard. It's really hard for me. So I apologize. Thank you guys. And we'll say right, Scott, I'm going to need a mediator on that one. I'm just going to say it right now. I'm going to need a mediator. So need someone there to keep. Brian's going to be there. We're going to go at it. That's all I got to say. We're going to go at it. So, I'm not excited because I don't want it to get personal. So, but like I said, anyway.
Yeah. No, I appreciate it, Paul. Miguel, thanks for staying up even later than my East Coast time. You're over there in space, so thanks for staying up so late,
Great.
hanging out, and talk Star Wars with us. Miguel, anything you want to plug with Star Wars Newsnet or Brian or Movie Newsnet before you get out?
Yeah, StarWarsNewsNet.com all day, all week, and I think we're off now.
Nope,
Getting close. Not yet.
Okay. I was listening to the music. Yeah, StarWarsNewsNet.com. Writing, editing, overseeing the whole thing, and just I have a Sunday piece that I'm working on like every Sunday, so stay tuned for that. It's called This Week in a Galaxy Far, Far Away. I'm having a lot of fun writing those, and I think the feedback is positive so far, so stay tuned for that.
Fantastic. Can't wait for next week. We're going to be talking all High Republic stuff, getting ready for Phase 3. New book just dropped. Go check out Nate's review on StarWarsNewsNet.com. Paul, you want to take us out of here?
Yeah. Come back after the High Republic stuff, and then the week after that, it's gonna get crazy. So
It's going to get crazy.
So that crazy, everyone. Thanks for coming, and the Force be with you.